With Chendales, it's common to hear the Chendal first, like the adjective first, and then the thing or person you're describing, just for effect. So in that last example, Mariela is skinny, I could have said, I Peru Mariela. You might hear, I pona she hermana, for my sister is pretty. Or, I cura she vaca, for my cow is fat. So here's a little weirdo quirk of Guarani. When you want to say them at the end of the sentence, when you have this kind of structure, you don't use ha y cuera. Why? I don't know. You say he quai. It's like in English. If you wanted to say, whew, crazy, those guys, you would say crazy he quai. In the dictionary, they say it's for him or her too, but I've asked around and they only use it for them, in these parts at least. So in this format, if you wanted to say they are fat, you might say ikura hiquai. I know, it's weird. But at least when I asked my Guarani teacher, she said hiquai, and I was like, what is hiquai? And she was like, oh, that's how you say them. And I was like, I thought it was ha'iquera. She was like, oh, just sometimes you use hiquai. And I was like, I'm going to just go jump off something. And then much later I found out it is when you use it at the end of a sentence. So I have organized all these details for you. Back in my day, learning Guarani was much harder. Okay, end of side note. So let's go ahead and learn the word for crazy, because it's a good one. It's tavu. Using that structure I just talked about, how would you say, crazy, those guys? Itavu hiquai. De tavu is you're crazy. And you'll just hear this all the time. It can also mean ignorant or like without culture, is how my host mom explained it to me. So be careful. I've said it to one person, they got a little offended. I was like, ooh, I was just kidding. Crazy time, like that. Good times, no, all right, sorry. Or you will hear this phrase all the time. This is a good one. De tavu, Michael. So what does that mean? Let's break it down. De is you. Tavu is crazy. Ma is that already or now. And iko is that question. So it's like, what are you, crazy? How would you say Guarani is super crazy? Guarani itavu eterei. Another thing people say about other people is that they are ña ña. This means bad or mean. Vai means bad in other ways, but ña ña is used for people. It's used for gossip. I once had an awesome fight with a 4-year-old who said, ne ña ña, to me. And I was like, ne ña ña. And then he said, day. And I said, day. And then I didn't give him any of my gum. You'll notice that ña ña is nasal, so you use the ne in front of it instead of the day. If you want to make a Chendale more of a temporary thing, you can use it with hina. For example, if your friend is usually a nice person, but she's being a little snappy today, you can just say, ne ña ña hina. This is like, you are currently being a jerk face, instead of you are mean as a more general statement. Sometimes people use hina with the kura to be like, oh, I'm fat right now. Like, I'm just going through a fat phase. But I'm not really this fat, I swear. How would you say, you're being crazy, like right now? De tavu hina. So here's another, a little nicer adjective that is a very important one, which is joparad from Spanish, which is guapo or guapa. Here you'll see a little bit of the Spanish influence where adjectives for men usually end in an O and adjectives for women usually end in an A. So if you've studied Spanish elsewhere in the world, you might know guapo as handsome, but in Paraguay it means to be hardworking. If I pass my neighbor and she's raking her lawn, I'll give her a te guapa. And it's like a fun little joke to respond, che guapaite, which is that guapa with the ite on the end of it, that like, I'm totally guapa. And notice again that it's not che guapa ite. It's combined. Che guapa ite. It's kind of weird because we never tell people in English like, oh, you're so hardworking. We always just use the opposite, like, oh, you're a lazy butt. But it's a very common compliment down here. Okay, so I'm going to continue, although it sounds like there's like a pig being tortured in the distance. I don't know what that is. Seriously, I have some bacon for tomorrow. Anyway, okay, we're going to try to continue to study. Okay, now we're going to look at some words, let's call them cross-dressers. They can be Chendales or regular verbs, depending on what they're wearing. One of these cross-dressers is another word, joparad, from Spanish, which is valer. Valer means to be worth something. You might hear someone say that money no vale nada. That means their money isn't worth anything. Maybe because you need 1,000 Guaranis to buy a pack of gum. Or with people, it's just like hardworking or worth something. It's a synonym of guapo. So, if someone sees me washing the dishes, they might say, de guapa or de vale. They're pretty much the same thing. So how would you say using this? Pedro is hardworking. Pedro y vale. When used with Chendales, it's an adjective. You are hardworking. However, when used with the regular driver cars, valet can be a verb. It means to be worth something too, or to cost something. For example, I just heard the other day, someone was showing Oscar something that they had just bought, and he said, "Bolu o vale." Remember that bolu means how much. So, bolu o vale means something like, how much did this cost? How would you say, how much does this cheese cost? Bolu o vale kokesu. Oh my God, the pig torture continues in the distance. Sounds of Paraguay. Soothing sounds of Paraguay. Pig squeals. Pig squeal edition. Track 5. You might also hear the phrase ovalema, which translates to, that's enough already. So it might be with like that mom with the 2 little kids, quarreling, and she's like, ovalema. Okay, I'm going to close the window because the pig torture is just killing me. Okay, so you might hear like the mom with the 2-year-old, pulling her hair like a 4-year-old sister, and she might say, ovalema, like that's enough. Or it's like, if I'm putting spices in the lunch and my host mom sees me and she's like, whoa, she's like, ovalema, sister. So let's practice those differences between valet as a verb and valet as an adjective. How would you say, Angelica is hardworking? Angelica y vale. How would you say, this pizza costs 5 mil? Co pizza o vale 5 mil. How would you say, that's enough? O vale ma. Very good. So another verb crossdresser that likes to swing both ways between Chendale and verbs is jopu. Jopu means to squeeze, like with lemons to make juice. Or someone was joking around and like slamming me between the door and the wall as a joke, and someone said that they were jopuing me. So jopu, if I say a jopu, that means I squeeze. A jopujina ko limon. I'm squeezing this lemon. Jopu can also mean like to work really hard, like to put your nose to the grindstone, like, oh, I'm working really hard. So, a jopu, re jopu is you're working hard, or you're squeezing a lemon, or you're, jopuing something. So when you use it as a Chendale, as an adjective, you're describing someone that squeezes every bit of money like a penny pincher. That's how you can think about it, because jopu means to be cheap as a Chendale. Ha'e I jopu means he's cheap. If I say ha'e o jopu, that is he's squeezing, he's out like a lemon, o jopu, or he's working hard. Let's practice a little bit. Julio o jopu. Julio is working hard, doing that squeezing thing. Julio y jopu. Julio is cheap. De jopu, you're cheap. De re jopu, you're working hard.